It is Saturday afternoon live, and we appreciate you joining us here. Tom Dienhart will be joining shortly with our special, and he's not our special guest, he's our expert. Obviously, we're at the spring showcase today. We'll talk about that as well. Purdue concluded its spring practices. Tom was at every last one of them, so he will have a great perspective on that. He'll be joining us, like I said, in a minute. Busy man because he's got a lot to finish up here as we try to put put a cap, I should say, on spring football. Okay, want to thank our sponsor too, and that's acrepro.com. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner. AcrePro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists with decades of experience in Indiana agriculture. No one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange or simply buying or selling farmland, your local AcrePro uh, agent will walk the land with you. There's Mr. Dienhart, and I'm going to jump him off the stage while I finish up for a second. But that local Acre Pro agent, and we saw Kyle Spray on the sidelines, by the way. He's your local Acre Pro agent. He's a part of the chain gang as well. But you can call 765-775-6502 and talk to your local land expert today. Again, that number 765-775-6502. All right, Mr. Dienhart does join, busiest man in college football, and obviously a sun-drenched afternoon. Couldn't find a better day, I guess. When you talk about football weather, I don't know, on the field, it might have been 55 degrees. It was about as good as it can get. I had my sunscreen on, so I don't think I got much. Both of our bald heads were covered up, so that was helpful. Tom, I guess, and I watched Barry Odom's comments, Devin Lockaby's comments that you've already put on the site. I know you're busy doing getting everything else put together. But just your overall impressions just of today. A lot of moving parts in the Saturday showcase.
Yeah, there sure are. It wasn't a traditional spring game, if you will. Sort of a mix, of some 11 on 11 scrimmage action. And there is some drill work and some work at both ends of the field at times as well. Fans got to see the Boilermaker drill. The squad executed that sort of late in the proceedings today. Sort of one of those high energy, get your juices flowing type drill as well. So, yeah, a lot like a lot of the practices we've seen, all spring, Al, and that's what this one sort of looked like. And I know Coach Odom wanted, he must have a chart where he wants a certain number of reps every practice for every position, for every player. So part of this today was he wanted to make sure he continued with that checklist and got the work in that they needed to get in and not sacrifice that just to have a spring game, if you will, with 4 quarters and whatnot. So, it's sort of hard to tell what his true feelings are when we talk sometimes. But I think we all can safely say there's still work to do, Alan Karpick.
Yeah.
There's always goods and bads every practice. Maybe one of the best things you can say, there weren't a lot of injuries, but the one injury that they did have was a huge one. With George Byrne, the tight end, suffering that ankle injury last week. Coach Odom said that he underwent successful surgery on Wednesday, expects him back for game 1, which was good news. So, now, Alan, we watch and wait and wonder what's next with the transfer portal set to open up on Wednesday here. It should be a very busy time for this football squad for sure.
I thought, because I said, if Tom did such a good job covering and being able to tell us what the heck's going on, because I'm sitting there, I almost get eye strain looking at the numbers, and I've seen all the guys you've been writing about all spring, but to be able to watch them on the stage. But I also thought Barry Odom was very honest. I really can't tell you, he said, how I feel about position groupings. I was saying, as a programmer, I talked to Brian Newbert yesterday for Saturday, because he goes, man, Tom, put the 5 biggest players of impact, put the 5 guys you can't wait to watch. You may be able to do that, but you may not be able to do that for several weeks now because of that portal deadline or portal opening. And certainly Barry Odom wasn't shy about saying, we don't really know in a lot of ways. And he called it, what was the term he said? It was an uncomfortable feeling. I think that may not be quite the right word. I can understand it. But just that whole thing of, what you see may not be what you get. What we saw today.
Yeah, just with again, he said way back, I think before football even started, that they could have as many as 20 portal additions in this April window, which, like I said, opens up on Wednesday, April 16th, and will continue for, I think, a 10-day period until April 25th. So there you go. That's a lot of coming and going if that's going to be the case. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if Purdue doesn't come close to maybe having 20 players come and go here.
Right.
Who's leaving? Who's coming? That's to be determined. We're going to hear more of that, I'm sure, beginning on Wednesday when the portal does open. And so if you're the head coach, it's sort of hard to really, make any real declarative statements on your team at this point if you anticipate that much change coming. But he has spoken in semi-glowing terms, if you will, of the offensive line. I think they got 7 guys they feel pretty good there, but they do need depth, Alan. They need probably 4 to 5 offensive linemen in the portal. And then the big storyline's quarterback, right? We could do a whole podcast on the quarterback. I think they need to get a quarterback, a number one quarterback. I get the sense there's some internal debate on the staff on if they really should or not. I still think in the end they have to get a true number one quarterback. I don't think they got a guy on their roster now that is a legitimate Big Ten week-to-week starting quarterback. And wide receiver, Allen, I think they got 3 or 4 guys they like. Charles Ross, Denylon Morissette, Armand Branch, and then Chauncey Magwood, who's out right now. Then after that, I think there's some questions, Alan. Even those 4 guys I mentioned, I don't think any of those 4 guys is a real number one. Those guys are more like 2s, 3s, and 4s on good receiving units. So, again, the offense has a lot of questions to answer, beginning with that quarterback spot, which will be the biggest storyline the rest of this month, I think, for Purdue.
Yeah, and trying to glom together who was running with the number ones. I guess you would have said Malachi Singleton today. Is that fair to say? But does that really mean anything? Because Bennett Meredith looked like he was running with the 4s for a while, and he's been in the mix. Obviously, Evans Chuba too. It's E.J. Colson on down the line. I mean, those 4 guys seem to be the ones, at least on the current roster, that are battling all this out. I mean, they all, and again, there's no, it's hardly a full scale scrimmage, but they all leave you with a level of impression. I do think it's interesting with Colson and with Singleton, not big guys, and you've talked about that and written a lot about that. They all want to throw like Patrick Mahomes. I get a kick out of the sidearm throwing, and you've seen that all throughout spring. But it is interesting just to watch. I was impressed, like I said, just with they didn't because they were really running scrimmages, almost working out on both sides of the field and trying to direct traffic. Guys were doing what they seemed to be pretty focused, pretty intent, but it's experience at that position that you may have to get in that portal, because if you're going to compete and you really want to raise all levels here, look at how much experience Purdue had at quarterback last year and the challenges it had with Hudson Card. This is a real challenge, and it's going to be really tough to go into that season without having an alpha dog at that position.
Yeah, it's sort of good to get your impression, because you have a fresh set of eyes out.
Yeah, I was fresh because that's the first time I've been in person this year. I've watched, I've read everything you've written, but I liked in passing the eyeball test. Charles Ross also, a guy the receiver that we played at USC. Just watching him run around, they had him kind of returning kicks, kind of in that punting. I thought it's so difficult to tell, and I would agree with you that he's not a big guy, but he seems fleet, and a guy that might be able to make some things happen in space. I certainly would agree with you, though I couldn't name any specifics. I thought the defensive line that I saw that looked to be the number one group does impress you, at least with size. And I love Devin Mockabee. I mean, my gosh, I love watching your interview with him post practice. This is a guy. If you can't cheer, I don't care. This is taking my nonpartisan hat off. He's just that guy that if you're ever going to have a program that might get some traction this year, and it's not going to be easy, we all can agree to that. But I do think Man, what a great place to start because, yes, he also has Big Ten level skills. I'm not saying he's the best running back in the Big Ten, but he's a good running back and he can run for 100 yards plus in a game in this league and has shown he can do that. I just love his attitude and being kind of honest with the questions. If you haven't had a chance to go back and watch the interview with it that Tom and the media group interviewed with, it's just typical Devin Mockabee. And that and you had to ask the question about changing oil and
Oh yeah.
the car stuff. But I like him a lot. He impressed me, and I think it's a good place to start because I do think this program, it seems to me, needs stability. And I'm not, we're not here to trash the old group because the old group was nice guys and were easy enough to deal with from our standpoint, at least from my standpoint. And you had to deal with them a lot more than I did. But my point is, I like that. I liked a couple special teams coach coming over and talking to his punters about, hey, just relax, and be able to do the job. And I think that is something that really, and it's James Shibest, is it Shibest, right? They really came in and just said, guys, just relax. And I thought there was some maturity there, just on my sideline and where I was standing at the northwest corner for much of the practice on the field. And it's fun to be on the turf too and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to scoot down. I think you were down there in the corner during the boiler drill. They seem to be having fun. And I think Barry Odom, one other comment I would say, just watching him. He's the coach of coaches. He still is intent on making sure things are run the right way, but I'm impressed by that as well. But they got a lot of work to do, and we all know that.
Yeah, they do, and a good staff, I think. And, back to your quarterbacks, I think Evans Chuba is the most talented guy they've got.
Yeah, I would agree. Throws the best ball, I thought.
Nice arm.
And yeah.
A good athlete, but I think he needs to mature and he can be careless with the ball at times. Doesn't seem to value the ball enough to give a coach that security that he can really trust him, And Ben Meredith, honestly, Alan's been the best quarterback, I think, for all spring football. He's obviously the oldest quarterback, has the most experience. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he has the most experience. Throws probably the most accurate ball. But I think the question with Bennett is if he's athletic enough to execute all the quarterback run game that this offense is going to require. So then you talked about Colson and Malachi Singleton. Pretty physically similar guys, 6-footers or so, good athletes. Not real dynamic passers. I think Malachi Singleton may be the guy. If you really had to pick one of the three transfers, I think in my mind would be the default guy you would go with at this point, just because I think the coaches can trust him to not force balls where they shouldn't go, not maybe commit any silly turnovers. So still a long way to go. Like I said, that's always a fun position to continue to analyze. Alan, you talked about the defensive line. I think the line has a chance to be pretty solid. You talked about a few of the guys up front, Trey Smith and C.J. Madden off the edge. I know they've been really pleased with Trey Smith's development. The two tackles, T.J. Lindsey, Chops Harkless. Someone told me they think T.J. Lindsey may be a pro. I know it's really jumping the gun for Richard.
Yeah.
He looked good. Watch number 13 this year. I think he has a chance to
He stands out when you watch him.
Yeah,
no question.
He plays with that effort. The echo of the whistle, as coaches and scouts like to say. And then you got some depth, I think, with the kid from Michigan, Breon Ishmael off one edge, C.J. Nunnally off the other edge, D'Amico Kennedy, number 55, Jamarius Dinkins. They may have 8 legit defensive linemen there, which is nice. Linebacker, we know they got the transfer already from Tennessee State. They got Manny Powell right now and the other kid from Arkansas, Alex Sanford. So I think they may need a little bit more depth there. But again, I could go down this depth chart all day. Long story short, I wouldn't be shocked if they get players in about every position except for maybe running back here. And as they continue just to try to upgrade that roster, because Barry Odom talked about it, they want to get the 105 best players they can.
Yeah.
And they certainly aren't there just yet, but they've had 15 practices here and some winter conditioning to get a real good handle on what this personnel looks like, and they obviously know what their needs are. And now let's see if they can address those needs.
Yeah, I love Chops Harkless's interview this week about his eating,
Yeah,
and he does fill up the uniform
he
and
does.
takes up space. Of course, we're talking about he'll be number 97, the
Yeah,
sophomore defensive lineman, weighs a little over 340, and
yeah.
he's a big boy and a guy that I think we'll see again how this all shakes out, and I think that's the thing that's interesting with what Barry Odom talked about, and that is the need to you have a sense he's got patience with this whole project, and he knows he has to. He's not going to jump. Barry is not going to jump too forward and make too many definitive statements. Though he did tell the crowd that he was going to win a bunch of football games this year. Coaches have to say that,
Mm-hmm.
and he believes that. He certainly hopes that that can be the case. Yeah, the whole portal situation and of course, the whole House decision, which didn't kind of get figured out all week, it's going to be interesting to see how that really does impact Purdue because you're going to have to pay out if you want to get that quarterback
Yeah.
a guy that's at the level that you think can run and maybe that person's on campus like you've talked about. We don't know that, but we don't. It seems like for their comfort level, they're going to need to have a little bit more of that as it as they move into that season opener against Ball State. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Trent was certainly the story. Yes, 2 days ago was it
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
scholarship
Yeah.
and a feel good story. Obviously, everybody knows the Trent family and Tyler's brother is Tyler's is a pretty good football player. I mean, the fact that he is in the rotation
Mm-hmm.
on scholarship, Devin Mockabee signaled him out as well, but. Again, a guy that has a chance to maybe it's the things that raise programs, and that's leadership and good stories of guys that get the right thing at the right time, and he seems to be that.
Yeah. Boy. If you're looking for a favorite player on the Purdue football team, you could do a lot worse than cheering for Ethan Trent. Of course, Mockabee, but as well. But man, Ethan Trent, like you said, a feel good story. And a guy who's earned that scholarship, Alan. He is
Yeah.
legit. He's one of the 7 best offensive linemen on this team right now, and he's going to play this year. And I think if he does play, he's going to play. He's going to play well. He was running with the first team the last couple of weeks at guard. He can also play
Yeah.
center, and yeah, just a special kid. Fans will remember he was the guy who was pushing Tyler's wheelchair in that south end zone before the Ohio State game. We probably saw lots of images of Ethan Trent back in those days when he was on campus with his brother at football games, and he was obviously a young kid. How many years ago was that?
It
2008.
was what 66 plus, or actually
Yeah,
seven if you look into it now. Right.
a chubby little
Six and a
kid,
half.
and here he is, full grown man. He's at least 6'1", uh, close to 300 pounds. Looks good, powerful, and valuable player. A humble kid, man. I tell you what, he's one of those guys, Alan. I think of Aiden O'Connell. I think of David Blau. I don't
Yeah.
know how guys can be that young and have that type of maturity, that type of perspective on life at such a young age. How they carry themselves and conduct themselves like fully mature men. It's really impressive. And Trent's did a great job raising Tyler and certainly Ethan too. So yeah, it's going to be fun watching his career. He's got 3 years of eligibility. Alan, remember, he signed with Indiana State or committed to Indiana State coming
Yeah.
out of
Right.
Carmel High School. And he talked about that story today, calling Jeff Braun back up and asking him what he could do to be a Boilermaker. That's really where he wanted to be, and got the chance to come as a walk-on. Now 2 years later, he's on scholarship. And that line today, Alan, from left to right, you had Joey Tonona,
Yeah.
probably
Good
your
story
best,
also.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably your best lineman. Another great story. Your Jalen St. John, the UNLV transfer from Arkansas too, and then the kid from Canada, Giordano Vaccaro. And then, of course, Ethan Trent. Then you have Bakeen Coley, the big number 78, very athletic right offensive tackle. 5 pretty good guys right there. And Jaden Ball is a young offensive lineman they like a lot as well. He works on the second team. Keep your eye on him. And Mason Vicari, who's a transfer from UNLV. He's been a little dinged up, but he was out there today. Those are probably your 7 best linemen right now. Those are 7 guys that if they had to play, the staff would not be holding their breath, and they know they would get a good effort from each one of those 7 guys.
Yeah, Bakeem Coley is, and I'm dating myself. He's a Kelly Butler size guy, really
Yeah, he
6'7",
looks good, man.
three,
He looks like an
three,
NFL offensive tackle.
310, and I guess, and again, he passed the eyeball test as I was surveying the groups today because he does stand out.
Yeah,
And and again, I like it. Just one thing about the workout today is, they almost look at it as, well, there's just no messing around. And again, I'm not saying there was messing around before, but I just thought it was very, very focused on what he, and that mantra of Coach Barry Odom is very much of, let's get some short-term goals, let's reach them, and let's see what we can do to develop into the long-term goal of being a competitive Big Ten football program. And I like that approach. It's not easy, but I think that's something that the kids can relate to. And yet you're going to have, you're also going to have guys on this roster, 10 or 15 of them, like you've talked about, who knows, that are going to say, and I think I sense, and you would have a much better sense than I would, that Barry Odom would be someone who'll be honest with him. And because in today's world, you have to be, that you tell them, here's what, this is where you sit. And this is what's going to happen, where we see you, I should say,
yeah,
heading into fall drills. And that will precipitate some level of movement, almost in that guaranteed near midweek.
yeah. They'll probably start having those conversations maybe as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah.
Those honest heart-to-heart conversations. Um, yeah, like when your wife would tell you, "Honey, we have to talk."
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I don't want to.
Well, and I think Matt Painter, we talk about basketball, and I think there's going to be, with this world and with Barry, there's just a premium in being honest with folks. There's no
Yeah.
sense in beating around the bush. Don't deceive. You've got to give an evaluation. That doesn't mean that person's evaluation is the definitive word. It's the definitive word for this program. Okay, that's understood. Coaching staff and of course Coach Barry Odom, but these guys have options and they have to weigh them carefully. The thing that's interesting to me is that they got to weigh them and they got to decide, gosh, I'm going to move out of this university where I am taking classes and trying to progress towards a degree. And that's what's an interesting dynamic with these guys. Some of them are going to make that decision and decide what's best for them. Uh, let's and I know you got a lot of work to do here, and last thing I really want to talk about just other guys that may have intrigued you. You kind of hit a lot of guys. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the Giordano Vaccaro story is
Yeah.
interesting, coming from Canada. Uh, and just the guys that you've had a chance to interview so far this spring that say, I kind of want to know more, and I'm really most eager to see them on the field. If you have your short list, I won't let you include Maccabee
Mhm.
because you've seen him and we've seen him, et cetera. But what are the guys that kind of just intrigue you the most and might be keys uh, to raising the all boats here as the Boilermakers look ahead to the 2025 season?
We haven't talked to him this year, but I talked to him last year, and we just were mentioning him as Bakeem Coley,
Yeah,
the big right tackle. He's a fun guy to talk to. He's kind of really into art. Uh,
yeah,
his path to Purdue, coming from an NAI school, Lawrence Tech up in Michigan, to Purdue, and he was a raw uh, player when he got here, and he's on the precipice of playing a big role this year. So he's a guy that holds a big key. I think could be special. I mentioned T.J. Lindsey, number 13, the redshirt freshman
yeah.
from Auburn. One of those guys, man. It's that nonstop motor, man, and it's hard to get big guys to play hard every down to the end of the whistle. And this is a guy that, to a man, everybody says is just like that, a big guy who moves and is hungry and hustles. And that's another guy that really intrigues me a lot. In the back end, Hadari Hines uh,
Yeah.
from Indianapolis. You know, we were talking about him today. Asked Tony Grimes, a fellow cornerback, and he said the thing that's really surprised him about Hadari Hines is he's faster than he thought. And
Yeah.
he's a pretty big cornerback. He's all of 6 foot, close to 200 pounds. Number 4 on defense. Remember that number. Number 4 on defense. Hadari Hines could end up being one of the better, if not the best, cornerback on the team this year as well. And I think Still in the back end too, number 7, Crew Wakely. I wrote about
Yeah.
him last week. 25
Watched him a little bit today.
old,
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
years old. Alan, married for almost 5 years. Used to sell solar panels door to door. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't make this stuff up. This is a real enjoyable young man. Went on a 2-year Mormon mission out of high school. He came to Purdue. He wants to play in the NFL, man. And it's funny we're talking to him when he got the chance to come here and visit. He was less than enthused. I think
Yeah.
he said, I guess I got nothing going on that day. I guess I'll come out and grace you guys with a visit.
Yeah.
He ends up committing on the visit. He was so impressed. So that's another guy, number 7 in the back end, Crew Wakely. Be a fun storyline, a guy who could play a key role.
Not running with the ones necessarily, or is that hard to determine?
Yeah, I mean,
He's
I wouldn't always get too caught up in those things.
yes, I agree.
They tried to work guys at different positions, different safety spots, different sides of the field. So as far as your cornerbacks go, he's been a little dinged up this spring as well. But he's going to play. He's going to have to play a big role. I think if that defense is going to be as good as people want. One guy we haven't seen much at all because of injuries, Malachi Thomas, a running back
Yeah.
from Virginia Tech. Jaheim Merriweather's a young running back on the team with a lot of potential, but I think Malachi Thomas is going to have to be the yin to Maccabee's yang, sort of in that backfield. A guy who's in his 5th year of college, mature guy, he's played at Virginia Tech. He's a guy that could be a real key factor on this offense. So Maccabee doesn't always have to carry such a big load because Allen, as good as Maccabee is, he still is not a physical specimen. I just do not know how he holds up. Because you look at his body,
Yeah.
he looks like a guy you can see at the co-rec playing racquetball.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting because I know Maccabee in your interview did call him out, and he, like you, was eager to see what's going to transpire. All right. It's funny, back in the day, you used to be able to take a couple deep breaths after spring ball. That will not be the case, unfortunately, for Tom Dienhart or the Purdue coaching staff. There'll be a lot of news this week. And as that roster continues to develop, and that will be a storyline. Tom, I'll let you get back to the grind here. Thank you so much for all your coverage, and we appreciate. Thanks all of you. We had a good crowd on hand today, and if you missed part of this, we'll post it also as there's a replay. There'll be a replay on there. You'll have a chance to watch this on YouTube.
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
Purdue received a commitment today from a high school kid, 2025 wide receiver Jalil Hall, who had signed with West Virginia, got out of his commitment because there was a coaching change. So big 6'4" wide receiver, Alan. Bunch of recruits were on hand today.
Yes.
Goldsberry, of course, was there. John Goldsberry's son, whose recruiting's blowing up. And a lot of old Boilermakers, Alan.
Yeah.
Talked to Kevin Sumlin for a while. Kevin was impressed by how Barry was running his practice. He's known Barry and Brad Odom for years. I talked to Kelly Butler. Just a lot of Boilers. Marcus Bailey was there. David Bell was there. Benny Sutherland was there. Just a cavalcade of former Boilers were on hand today to enjoy the festivities and the beautiful weather here.
Yeah, I didn't see as many. I think I saw Kevin from a distance, but and you've known him for such a long time. Of course, the former Houston, Arizona, Texas A&M coach, and involved with coaching as well. He's a great guy to talk to. So hey, Tom,
of course,
yeah,
the best
go ahead.
detective in the Lafayette Police Department was there too, Alan.
Yeah,
Dan Anthrop was on hand, keeping everybody safe.
Yeah, we appreciate those guys. They're important, and then some. All right, my friend. Thanks again so much. Thanks again to our good folks at acrepro.com. Kyle Spray, again, we had a couple minutes with him today, and he was chatting us up about the good weather, and always good to see Kyle. 765-775-6502, that number. Acrepro.com has been a sponsor of us all year. If you're looking for a 1031 exchange or just want to buying or selling farmland, talk to Kyle Spray and the good folks with acrepro.com. And we'll look forward. It'll be here right before you know it, August. And we never hurry these summers away or springs, but
we'll have camps in June with a lot of recruits coming through camps over here. Yeah. And that should be a big month for OVs, also probably for a lot of commitments as well. So there'll be a lot going on in June as well. And then, like you said, before we know it, you're in the Big Ten Media Day and then training camp. And then on August 30th, Alan, Ross-Ade Stadium, Ball State, Barry Odom era really begins.
Yeah, we'll have a more discussion over the summer in terms of Barry Odom and recruiting because I think
Hmm.
he's getting some traction that's
Yeah.
interesting
Hmm.
and a lot to be talked to. Check the site out too,
Yep.
goldenblack.com, because a lot of information on just kind of where that's going. I get a sense he's very comfortable in the high school recruiting realm,
Mhm.
and as you've written many times, prioritizing that
Yeah.
in a world where some guys are only playing the portal game.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to get that done. All right, well. That and many other storylines to follow. Thanks again, all, for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Saturdays. Again, replay will be up here shortly. Tom, thanks again. Have a great rest of your
Thank
day.
you, Alan. You too, buddy.